Chapter 721. The events that followed were easily inferred without hearing them. Those who claimed to have come from the central stronghold of the Star of Nagran were likely bewildered and panicked, having their identities and intentions thoroughly exposed before they could even infiltrate the cavalry. The Star of Nagran, even if belonging to the same group, members from different strongholds barely know each other. With internal strife brewing beneath the surface and the cavalry's recruitment of new members causing upheaval, coordination in such a situation was unlikely. It was Yether who had anticipated the likelihood of their downfall due to internal conflicts based on memories from his past life, and it was Keshir who had spread the news of the massive second batch recruitment of members without conditions and had planned to weaken the sages and Nahan's group by leaking the list of the cavalry's collaborators. Now, these predictions and plans were coming to fruition, benefiting them as expected. Yether looked at the faces of his colleagues and the former Awakener members of the Star of Nagran, who were smiling despite being embarrassed. He had already guessed from the west that the sage would start acting seriously from his stronghold in the south. The original plan was to weed out the applicants in the south before leaving and clean up the surroundings. But he hadn't anticipated that things would be resolved in this manner before he even made his move. It felt quite novel to him, especially the method used for selection being a ruse. Even Yether, had he been here, would not have thought of such a tactic. The ruse conducted by the Southern Branch members and the successful applicants of the Star of Nagran was, in fact, quite simple. First, the successful applicants loitered near the Awakeners from the central stronghold, dropping conversations that hinted they were from the same Star of Nagran. Then, the members acted as if the same situation in the cavalry was dire, sneakily leaking fake information desirable to any spy and pretending to share serious inside information with the applicants. To the central stronghold's Awakeners, it seemed as if these applicants were on the same mission as themselves and had already infiltrated the cavalry, gathering sufficient information, a perfect misdirection. In their eagerness, these individuals approached the applicants first, unwittingly revealing their own identities and intentions. The cavalry members successfully identified all of them without shedding a drop of blood. If it were me, I would have just used my powers on all of the applicants to quickly reveal their true colors. Even the cavalry of my previous life would have done the same. However, the fact that the present members chose a different method, a ruse, was probably because they had a similar experience in the West and discovered that it could be surprisingly effective. Who had given them that experience? It was none other than Keshir Lahore standing before them. The fact that the same person can make entirely different choices depending on their experiences and what they learn had been observed several times by Yether while watching the cavalry members, but it had never struck him as clearly as it did today. Anyway, yes, it was a splendid method to uncover the enemy's identities, but before we could capture them, something unexpected happened. In fact, that's the real cause of what's happening right now. As Yether regained his composure, Keshir smiled and began to speak. His gaze swept over the confused enemies and the suspicious figures caught in between, their whole bodies concealed. All the spies we thought we had identified were accounted for, except for a Southerner Awakener witnessed by the successful applicants. You must have heard by now who that is, right? Are you referring to the person who was the temporary leader of the southern stronghold? Was her name Sarah? Yether mulled over the unfamiliar name. Yes, surprisingly, at the time the spies were active, she did not target this branch but aimed elsewhere. Can you guess where? Yether's mind raced. If the children, including Jack, were not mistaken, then she must have come here with a purpose. It wouldn't have been strange for someone entrusted with a critical mission of overseeing the stronghold in the sage's absence not to come to this branch, especially if she wasn't aiming to infiltrate the cavalry. If infiltration wasn't the goal, it would have been logical for her to assist or guide the central stronghold's Awakeners, who were unfamiliar with the South. But instead, she targeted somewhere else at the same time? Then why? For what reason? And where did she aim? There was only one other plausible answer. She was said to have formed close ties with the Southern merchants, and those behind the recent death of the second prince of Honi was precisely them, considering their objective wasn't just to overturn Honi, but also to frame and harm the cavalry. The conclusion that the others targeting the cavalry Aton had mentioned after being knocked out by Yidr were the sage and the star of Nagran. Reserving this line of thought, the situation appeared in a new light. What would the Southern merchants have thought if they had early access to the sage's plan in the south through their cooperative relationship with Serra? Naturally, they would have devised a way to inflict the maximum damage on the cavalry, adding the sage's plans to their own schemes. Once entangled in a cooperative relationship, it can intertwine 2 or 3 times more. The word cooperation implies mutual support. If the Southern merchants had helped Serra and the Southern stronghold, then it meant that Serra would have also assisted the Southern merchants when they requested help. The scenario of the Southern merchants proposing to help Serra and the Southern stronghold again, cunningly interjecting themselves into this plan, easily formed in Yidr's mind. The stronghold was already at great risk due to the internal conflicts, so refusing their help would have been more surprising. It was uncertain how much the sage knew about the Southern merchants, but ultimately it seemed clear that Serra had moved with them. The Southern merchants must have known how the Star of Nagran would move and even how the second prince of Honi would die. The next target for them could only be one. The people who left the cavalry branch for a while to investigate the death of the second prince of Honi they had killed. More precisely, the center of the cavalry, Commander Kishir Laor. He was an awakener, but his exact abilities remained unclear, and many doubted and questioned even his possession of the divine sword. Known to be physically frail, not very bright, foolish, and fond of frivolities, there couldn't be an easier yet impactful target. Moreover, Kishir had sent even his deputy, Nathan Zuckerman, ahead somewhere after concluding the investigation of the second prince of Honi's body and had boarded a carriage with only Yidr. Yidr's reputation had indeed soared after resolving the incident in the west, but it hadn't reached the level of his previous life where his mere existence inspired fear. He was still a novice, not even a year into revealing his name to the world, and he had not directly confronted the Southern merchants during his time in the West. If they considered him merely an inexperienced youth to contend with, it wouldn't have been strange for them to feel confident, especially with the additional strength of Serra and others from the Southern stronghold on their side. And in fact, even Yidr had secretly disembarked from the carriage midway. Kishir had been alone on his return to the branch. The moment Yidr realized this, a chill similar to a shiver ran through his entire body. His eyes deepened and a dark, ominous voice flowed from his parched lips. "Don't tell me, they even targeted the carriage carrying the commander?" Although he phrased it as a possibility, his conviction was almost certain. And as if confirming Yidr's thought, Kishir slowly nodded. "That's correct." A deep, silent sigh escaped. A mix of incredulity and anger bubbled up from deep within. Knowing Kishir's true abilities, he was aware that Kishir would not fall victim to a sudden attack. What infuriated him was the fact that he himself had not been there. Yidr, trying his best to calm his emotions, asked, "Does the blood on your clothes also stem from that incident?" "It would seem so," came the nonchalant reply.